Now this is a basic, like we have kind of covered all the GraphQL operations in a single query, by writing an SQL query in developer console and then simulating the same query into the GraphQL with the help of Altair client. Now let me also tell you, if you really wanted to know what was the total number of records that your query has returned, what is the total number of record that your query has returned, okay? So for that, before these edges or after the edges, so we have something here. Let me, okay, yeah, you see these edges here. I'm going to zoom it more. You can see these edges, the edges are ending here. So either before the edges, okay, either before the edges or after the edges, if you hit enter and do a control space, you will see something called total count, so if you include this total count, that is going to include the total number of record that your GraphQL query is returning. And if you also wanted to perform or implement the pagination in your GraphQL query, like you have got first 10 records, then you want next 10 records, then you want next 10 records. If you want to implement that, for that also GraphQL gives you the ability, and that is if you hit enter after total count and say page info. Page info is an object. It accepts or it gives you the information about if you have, like the next page is visible, has next page, or if previous page is visible, has previous page. What is the end cursor and what is the start cursor? The cursors are going to be used to get the next records, okay? So let's go ahead and execute this after preparing this query, which is going to have total count as well as the information about pagination, about page. And if we now go ahead and execute this, we will see, if you scroll down to the bottom, you can see here total records are 8, and it says has next page, false, has previous page, false. What is the end cursor and what is the start cursor? So this is how basically you can implement pagination. We will see how the pagination is going to get implemented in LWC. But this is, I just wanted to give you the heads up that there is a possibility to implement the pagination as well. And there is one keyword which we are going to use for implementing the pagination is after. So because we wanted to know, right, after which cursor, after how many records we need to query the next set of records. So by default after will be null. So if we provide after value as null, then it is going to start from the 0. If we provide some cursor here, the after is going to accept the end cursor. So if we provide the value of end cursor, it will start from that end cursor and will fetch the next set of records that we have added here as a limit, okay? So but that is something we will talk about later while implementing in LWC. So that is what I wanted to talk about here. Now there is one thing that here what we have is, okay, let's see first. Here, sorry. So now what we were talking about is these filters are currently having static values, right? But if you are running this query in Lightning Web Component, so you might be wanting to pass the dynamic values. definitely you will be wanted to pass the dynamic values. So how you will pass the dynamic values in the GraphQL query? In the GraphQL query. So to pass the dynamic values, let's say that you have to pass this first as a dynamic value. Okay, you have to pass this uh, the value for like filter and the value for less than filter as a dynamic value. So there are three variables that are going to be treated as dynamic, or if I say that you wanted to pass the value for these filters in a dynamic way, so how you will do that? So what you have to do is, now treat this get accounts, the name of your query, as the name of a method in Apex class. Treat this your uh, query name as a name of method in any Apex class. So if I have to show you, and if I show you any class, if I have, let me open a class here. Okay, let me open a class, maybe list demo. So if you have a method here, let's say public static void get accounts, right? Something like this. And you wanted to pass the parameters here. So how you'll pass here? You'll say integer limit, or limits maybe, and then you will say string like param, and you will say okay, maybe decimal revenue, right? This is how you will pass the parameters. This is how you will pass the parameters, right? So similarly in GraphQL, in the query name, because you wanted to pass the variables, in the query name you have to pass the parameters. So to pass the parameter, use opening and closing parenthesis, and then here you have to create the variable names. So let's say you wanted to name the variable as limit, so you have to name it as dollar limit. Your variable name should be starting with dollar. You say dollar limit colon, and what is the data type of this? This is int, so it should be int. It should be int, and then use this variable here. Then use this variable here. Then similarly put a comma. Then you have to say, let's say like param, right? So you need to say dollar like param. Okay, dollar like param. What is the data type of this? It is a string. It is a string. Then next that you have to do is dollar, let's say dollar revenue. And what is the data type for this variable? That is currency. That is currency. That is currency. Now you have to use these variables here. Dollar limit we have already used. Dollar like param we are going to use it here, and we are going to say dollar revenue. Dollar revenue. Okay, we have got this. Now how we are going to pass the values to these parameters in Altair client? How we are going to pass the values to this GraphQL parameters in Altair client? So for that there is something called variables. Let me adjust my screen. So there is something called variables in the bottom of Altair client. Okay, so what you have to do is just click on this, and the variables are currently blank. The variables are currently blank. So you have to put key and value. So let's say key and value. Then similarly key and value. Key and value. Because there are three parameters that we have created here. There are three parameters that we have created here. Now what is the parameter? What is the variable name? That is limit. What is the other variable name? That is like. And what is the third one? That is revenue. So limit is going to be, because this is a type of integer, so we will say integer 20. Like param, let's say percentage oil. And then currency value, we are going to get it from our SOQL query that we have executed. SOQL query that we have executed and put it here. So We have prepared the variables now here. Now these variables are defined in our query, and if we now execute this, we send this, we will see the result here. We will see the result. You could clearly see the result here, and this is completely dynamic. Now if I change the limit to 1, change the maybe filter to something Singapore, okay, something for Singapore, or maybe let me type Singapore completely, and if we send this request, you will see that there is only one account here. And okay, it says Singapore. Okay, this is because of the condition is or. This is because of the condition is or instead of and. So we got this account. We got this account. Okay. It says total count as 6, but we really don't have 6 records here. It is only displaying one record because we have got limit as 1. So what this total count 6 means? Yes, you can clearly see has next page says true. So there are 6 pages. There are 6 pages. There are 6 pages, right? We can navigate one after one after one till 6. Okay, one after one after one till 6. So on, and if I say instead of or to and again execute the request, we will see that the same contact where says sorry account United Oil and Gas Singapore, the revenue, and it says total count as 1, has next page as false. So basically this is how you are going to pass the dynamic values to the GraphQL query from Altair client. Again, from Altair client. How we are going to pass it into the GraphQL LWC, we will see later on into the coming videos. So this is just the basic of GraphQL client, covering the basic SQL queries, not the aggregate one, the basic SQL queries with all kind of filters, or not actually all kind of filters, but the filters, then order by, limit statement, everything is here. Okay, everything is here. Now how you could get all this information, that is available into the Salesforce document. And to get this information, what you have to do is you have to search for a couple of things. One, go to Google and search for GraphQL API plus Salesforce LWC, and you will find the very first link. Just click on that link to open this particular link, which is going to give you the information about what is GraphQL wire adapter. Okay, the second thing that you need to search for is GraphQL field operator. Okay, GraphQL field operator in Salesforce LWC. Salesforce LWC. If you search for that, you will find something called field operators GraphQL API. Click on this link and it is going to take you to the correct link, and this is where it is going to talk about various operators. It is going to talk about how you could put filters in the where class, and that you will get if you scroll down, below here, how you are going to apply the filters. You will see here, these are the examples. You could see here, right, how you are going to apply the filters for different data types. And here is the example queries that is given, we have already talked about. Then there is a filter that we have already talked about, right? So these queries might not exactly work in your Altair client due to some syntax changes, something, but how it works, we have already seen it. Yeah, one last thing. You might have a question why we used this Altair client instead of Postman. Can we use Postman? Definitely we could use Postman, but Postman is not going to give you this flexibility, this much flexibility, giving the suggestions, accepting the variables, everything. Postman is not going to give you this flexibility. That is why we have used Altair client for executing GraphQL queries.